Hello guys and welcome to a new video, my first video of 2017. I apologise that there's been a bit of a wait in between the last video and this one. I just got really busy over Christmas and the New Year, so belatedly I hope you all had a lovely holiday season and New Year and that everything is going well for you. So for this video, as you can see, I'm drawing a digital piece of my original character Cinnamon. This piece was created in Paint Tool Sai with my Wacom Cintiq Companion Hybrid. I decided it was about time that I drew a picture of Cinnamon, like a full body picture rather than just a headshot, because I've been working on his final design for a while and I think I finally managed to pin it down. And also I've actually received a few fan art pieces from people who've drawn him for me, and that's kind of amazing for me. It's really flattering because I just don't expect it, and to know that your characters are liked enough for people to take time out of their day to want to bring them to life in their own style, that means a lot to me. So I thought it was probably about time that I did a proper picture of him. In this drawing process, I did kind of keep changing my mind about the pose and the position of the character, because even as I was working on it, I was still figuring out the final details. So I thought it would be interesting for me to discuss kind of my character design process and how I worked on all the little details as I went. The very first version of Cinnamon came about in 2009 when I wrote a fanfiction for the film Avatar, so that's the Blue Aliens Avatar, not the cartoon series. And basically what I did was just take the universe of Avatar and put my own characters into it, because that was what I tended to prefer doing at the time with fanfiction, was to take a concept rather than the entire cast of characters and just kind of run wild and have fun placing my own characters into that environment and seeing what happened. So I created these characters especially for this fanfiction, and I really fell in love with them and really loved writing about them. So Cinnamon was actually originally a human. He was Irish, he was a pilot, his name was Colm O'Leary, and the part about him being a pilot is probably the only thing that has remained in this final version now. As far as I can recall, well, apart from the fact that he also had black hair and a ponytail and his name begins with C. His personality is kind of the same, but I think Cinnamon's kind of got a little bit more snark to him. And yeah, so basically I really enjoyed writing about these characters, and I was disappointed when I finished writing the fanfiction. I say finished, I actually never finished it, so I apologise to anyone who may have been reading that fanfiction in the long distant past. And I was kind of disappointed I missed those characters. I wished I could have found another use for them, but I never managed to. Two of those other characters were Fiona and Kieran, who you'll have seen in my Scrawlerbox challenge with the Sweet Sunday illustration, and I'll put a link to that up in the corner so you can check that out if you're interested. And so basically I decided recently, when I wanted to put together a space opera story, that perhaps I could bring those characters out of retirement, as it were, and use them in that. I wanted to write a space opera for a really long time, ever since I first saw Outlaw Star when I was about 14, but I just never had any ideas for a concrete storyline, which is unusual for me because I tend to usually work the other way round. So I'll design some characters and then think, I should probably work a story around them somehow. But for this one I was really clueless for years, and this story was just sitting in the back of my mind from the age of 14 until 25, and it's only recently that I've really started to work it out and put it together. I really enjoy, like I said, Outlaw Star, Cowboy Bebop, Firefly. There's also a really amazing book by Becky Chambers called The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and that's the kind of story that I aspire to tell. I'm less interested in focusing on large-scale sort of intergalactic warfare stories and more on having a narrower focus on the characters themselves and their relationship with each other as they explore this world together. So that's really what I was aspiring to do, and so the characters are really important to me because they have to carry the entire story on their shoulders. And this is never an unimportant thing. Your characters always have to be strong enough to carry the story. But when you've only got a few of them in a very large environment, then you've got to kind of make sure that they're memorable and they're relatable to the reader, which is moving on to another point about writing space opera, is the issue with writing aliens, because this is a completely new challenge for me. When I've written before, I've done high fantasy, I've done cyberpunk, So I've written about androids, I've written about elves, dragons, mermaids, and those are all pre-existing concepts in the reader's mind. They already have a mental image and a concrete idea of what those will be like. So essentially you're just building on something that the reader is already familiar with, whereas if you're creating an alien race, then you're working completely from scratch. And to me, that is quite a frightening challenge, because there's so much responsibility there. There is an issue with aliens that you've got to tread that fine line between making them obviously not human, but not so far away from human that the reader can't relate to them, or perhaps making them relatable despite them being nothing like humans. That's the difficulty, and something that I've been working on throughout the development of Cinnamon as a character and also his race. There are other alien races that I'm working on, but I haven't got anywhere near as far with them as I have the Arinthi, which is what Cinnamon's race is called. So for those who would like more information on the story itself, I'm just going to put in a shameless plug here and state that you can read the entire first draft as I work on it on my Patreon. If you're interested, it's going to be very rough, it's going to be messy, and it's probably not going to make any sense in places, but if you've been curious to know what one of my stories looks like from the beginning, then you're welcome to subscribe to my Patreon. It's from $1 per month, completely up to you. And then you can have a look at a load of exclusive stuff on there, so there's like doodles and sketches and various other goodies. Basically, the story begins on a planet called Ethrin, which is about half the size of Earth. It's somewhere on the outer edges of our solar system, or it may move. It might just move across the universe as the story changes, so I haven't decided exactly where it is yet. But it's a small planet that's tidally locked to its star. So one side is very bright, that's called the Scorch, the other side is in darkness, that's called the Dusk, and the Goldilocks zone in between is called the Crescent. And the Crescent is where Cinnamon and Fiona and Kieran live. Though the Arinthi primarily live above ground at the time of the story, they did evolve originally as a burrowing race. So I tried to take that into account with their design. I took inspiration from several different types of animals. So you can see influence from burrowing mammals in the shapes of their limbs. There's also a little bit of influence from reptiles. And I worked their eyes on the concept of spiders' eyes, which unfortunately resulted in quite a bit of looking at pictures of spiders, which wasn't a lot of fun for me because I'm scared of spiders, but it had to be done. The Arinthi also were once a prey race. They were once bottom of the food chain until their primary enemy died out. So that's kind of the different ideas that I was building into their design. You can see at the beginning of the sketching process that I was working out his anatomy and his pose. The Arinthi are around 10 feet tall in their normal crouch position and around 12 feet tall if they could stand up straight, which I don't believe they actually can because of the way their legs are shaped, but in theory they could be 12 foot tall. And he has a permanent slouch because of the way that their bodies are constructed. They've got very broad shoulders, very narrow waists, and so you could see me kind of trying to work out the sketch the way I see it in my head. The Arinthi are very proud of their heritage and they regard themselves as being one with their home planet. They believe that their fates are tied together, so they have to look after it, and so they have never really strayed far beyond the boundaries of Ethrin. They are very good at sculpture, architecture, everything that involves working with the earth, as it were. So going for a career like Cinnamon's was an unusual choice. It was a little bit frowned upon in his society, but that's always what he's wanted to do. He's never wanted to do anything else. He's always dreamt of flying. And now that he's achieved that goal, he's very content. He's just one of those people who doesn't have any particular aim in life other than to be happy. And when he flies, he's happy, and that's all he needs, really. As part of his job role, he meets a lot of different people from different cultures, and he loves that. He's a real chatterbox, he'll talk to anyone, and he often brings home sort of knickknacks and gifts for people from his travels. So that's what I decided to bring into his design, was various different accessories and different items from places he's visited. There are also quite a lot of scars that I added in towards the end for two reasons. Firstly, because as much as he'd like to shrug it off, his job isn't always safe and he does sometimes go into dangerous territories. And secondly, because he does a lot of work on his shuttle himself. The shuttle is called Skeeter and it's like his baby and he won't let anyone else work on it. So he's got a lot of marks on his hands from that aspect of his job as well. So those are all the little details you can see me adding into his design as I go, alongside his standard work uniform. I need to say a big thank you to Jackie, who took the time to send me an email with a little drawing of Cinnamon and an idea for how his goggles could work after I mentioned that I was having trouble figuring out how they worked. So thank you, Jackie, I'm really grateful for that. For anyone who is curious to know Cinnamon's full name, basically the first syllable is unpronounceable for humans because of the way that the Arinthi's vocal cords and tongues are constructed, but the gist of it is that his full name is Srinarathi Keldanri Naldunian, which is why his friends have decided that Sin or Cinnamon is easier. And at first he was a bit confused by this, but now he finds it funny because he has a sweet tooth and he does like a lot of human food, and he has accidentally introduced himself as Cinnamon to prospective clients in the past at his job. So that's in case anyone was curious to know what his actual name was, because I hadn't mentioned it yet. And I think that's pretty much everything. I had to stretch out this video a little bit more, unfortunately, because I rambled too much, so I had to make the time lapse a bit longer than I was planning to. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm sorry for the long wait in between videos. I will try not to do that again. And thank you for your continued support. So since this is my first video of 2017, I look forward to producing another year of videos for you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye!